Welcome back to ESBR Boxing in partnership with sharpbetting.co.uk. Delighted as always to be joined by Niall O'Connell. This is an instant reaction video to Filip Hrgovic beating Joe Joyce via unanimous decision in Manchester tonight. Niall, hope you enjoyed it. An entertaining fight. Joe Joyce went into that fight as a 3-1 underdog and wasn't in my opinion far away from pulling it off. What did you think of that?
Yeah, I have to say, I enjoyed the fight. First of all, like it was, don't get me wrong, it was incredibly sloppy. It wasn't a defensive masterclass from either man, but I thought it was quite entertaining for large portions. And Joe Joyce really surprised me there. Credit to Joyce, I think. He was the underdog coming in. Say what you want about Hrgovic. Hrgovic is a decent fighter. He is a better fighter than Derek Chisora, who Joyce lost to last time out, but I expected Hrgovic to kind of blast Joyce out there. But Joyce looked like the kind of somewhere near the Joyce of old. I thought he pushed the pace well. His relentless pressure, his volume, his kind of volume punching and the chin we all thought was had left him. It seems to still be there. He took some incredibly big shots of Filip Hrgovic and they just bounced off him. So credit to Joyce. But in terms of the winner, I think I had it 96-95 Hrgovic. And it was one of those, what do you prefer, work rate or effective punches. And you just couldn't ignore the size of the shots that Hrgovic was landing on Joyce. Just I know Joyce has never been a defensive master, but yeah, they were just huge shots. And yeah, I think the right winner, but very close. Like if I had a swung the other way by a round, I probably wouldn't have argued with that either.
Yeah, for sure. Like just for clarity, 97, 93, 98, 92, 96, 95, all in favor of Filip Hrgovic. I think something that the commentators touched on now was Joyce. I think the key point in the fight was at the end of round seven, beginning of round eight. At the end of round seven, I think a lot of people would have had Joyce maybe just edging that fight. He'd maybe done more, been more active. Hrgovic also looked like he was kind of feeling sorry for himself, looked finished. And then I thought Hrgovic won round eight, and I thought he won round nine. And I think there's a good chance he won round 10 as well. And I think that ended up kind of deciding the fight. Would you go along with that? Do you think that's fair, or do you kind of think Hrgovic was perhaps winning the fight anyway?
No, I definitely agree with your take there. I think Joyce was edging it at that stage, and Hrgovic, it's been kind of the big question mark over him was his mentality. He has tendencies to kind of look not interested or look like he's feeling sorry for himself, and he was at that stage. And at that stage, it looked like it was Joyce's fight to kind of lose. Joyce was completely in the driver's seat, but Hergovich kind of answered a few questions there as well as to how he finished the fight. He did step up the urgency in the last three rounds, and that was ultimately what won it for him, in my opinion. It's just he does have positive attributes. Hergovich, he has a good chin. Of course, he has that kind of technical skill, and from his amateur background, people question is he a big puncher? I think he is a big puncher. I think Joyce's chin tonight was fantastic. So it's just why can't he put what he put in those last three rounds into the rest of fights? But yeah, credit to him in the home stretch answered a lot of questions there for me.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I think it's a funny one with Hrgovic because at one point he was spoken about as the most avoided fighter in the division. Had that win over Zhilei Zhang, which I personally don't think he won that fight, but it was a close fight. I think there's been lots of talk about how that was a robbery, and this week in the build to this fight, I'm not really not convinced it was. Um, and now all of a sudden, I think there are a lot of people saying, "Oh, he's not going to trouble world level," and the guy's only lost one fight. What's your take on the future of Hrgovic's career? he could be fighting for another 5, 6, 7 years. We've obviously got a lot of heavyweights who are kind of in their kind of 35 or older, say, whether it's Usyk, Joshua, say what you want about Fury. There are a lot of heavyweights who are in their grander years now. Can HRGOVIC be a big contender in the next few years, Noel, or do you not see that happening?
Yeah, it is an interesting one, on his age. If it was any other division apart from heavyweight, you'd say at 32, you'd be kind of near the end. But heavyweights, do have a kind of a longer shelf life. In terms of do I see him kind of troubling being a contender? As I said, he has the attributes to do it. His kind of reputation has cooled down a lot from the Zhang fights to Dubois fights and the mentality issues. But I just hope now that he does kind of take a lot of confidence from tonight's win when he had to kind of dig in and dig out the win. He was fighting to save his career tonight. And those last 3 rounds, he fought like a man who was fighting to save his career. So I think he can give a lot of heavyweights real problems when he's on his day and he puts his kind of tools together. But in terms of if he was to fight for a world title, I don't see him winning a world title. Not unless kind of some of the belts become fragmented and maybe fights for a vacant kind of crown. But I still think he can give a lot of people trouble. To be honest, and yeah, he still has a few years left, I think, but I don't think he'll ever kind of reach the mountaintop of a world champion.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think we're not going to go into who he's going to fight next because I think there's so many heavyweights out there. We'd be here all night in terms of discussing the various options. He is still ranked in governing bodies in the top 15, so maybe next it could be some sort of eliminator. But you don't know what route he wants to go down, Hrgovic. He's a funny fighter. One thing I would say, he's come in on a month's notice tonight. He's come to foreign soil. Um, and he's won the fight via unanimous decision. Say what you want about the performance, but that is impressive. And I want to tune in on Hrgovic's next fight. I want to see what's left. I wouldn't write him off as a top heavyweight just yet. On Joe Joyce, Niall, will do you think he should retire, and will he retire?
I think he absolutely should retire. See, it's a funny one. I thought he absolutely should have retired after the Chisora loss. I didn't think that left him with anywhere to go. But as I've said in this video, I was surprised tonight with his performance. I really was. I thought he looked good, but in a way, I think that's a good kind of a good place to leave it. Not the man that was stopped by Zhang, not the man that was lost to Chisora. I'd love it if he called it a day on a good performance on that high. Um, 39, how far can he go? The only thing that I'd say is, and what worries me in a way is, I think he might look at that performance and say, okay, I still can kind of mix it with top fighters in the division. So I think that could make him say, I'll keep going. But I think at a point he needs saving from himself, to be honest, at his age and the damage he takes. So I really hope he does retire. Um, Willie, I'm not sure. I was kind of thinking this, at the closing rounds of that fight, as maybe a swan song. You could have Joe Joyce and David Adelaide for a British title, maybe get him a British title to kind of ride off into the sunset with. But yeah, I think for his own sake, his own health, I think that's it now. I don't think Joe Joyce is kind of in the business of staying around for just British titles.
Yeah, I think so. Joyce, his last 9 fights, he's been the main event in 8 of them. So he will have made some good money from boxing. And I just think that if you consider now, it's what is that? Yeah, it's four losses in his last 5 fights, and the one win was against Cash Ali. Um, I think I obviously agree with you. He should retire, but I don't know whether he actually will. I think it's a really tough question. I think that there is, as you said, there's there's a narrative as to why he should carry on from maybe his side. And it's maybe kind of up to him. He turns 40 later this year. That could be another reason to retire. Um, but that leads me on to my final question of the evening to you, Niall. Um, we were supposed to see Joe Joyce versus Dillian White tonight. After seeing Joe Joyce tonight, what would have happened if that fight had happened?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. Before this, when the Joyce White fight was announced, I thought White would stop Joyce pretty brutally, to be honest. But if Joyce had a fought like he did tonight, there's every chance he could have won. White isn't kind of a world beater himself, and he's kind of on the slide in his own career. So I think if Joyce had a fought tonight, how he fought, if he had a fought against White, how he fought tonight, I think he probably would have won. To be quite honest with you, the only question is White is definitely a bigger puncher than Hergovic. So could Joyce have kind of withstood the shots from White that he did from Hergovic? I'm not so sure, but I think Joyce impressed me enough tonight to think he would have edged past White, and who knows, maybe that fight will happen next if he does carry on fighting Joe Joyce.
Yeah, yeah. Look, it's a possibility, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. Niall, good to be joined by you as always. I will speak to you again very, very soon.
Cheers, take care.